So I believe we have Dr. Everett Piper online. Hi, Dr. Piper.
Hi, how are you doing, Debbie?
I'm very well. How are you, sir?
Doing great.
Dr. Piper, as you know, he's been on the show many times, and he is he's a great American asset, actually. He's a columnist for the Washington Times. He's a former president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, the author of a great book, and not just a book, but kind of a good reminder, kind of launched people into recognizing some of the problems we have on America's college campuses. He wrote a book called Not a Daycare. That's not the full title, but Not a Daycare, which is basically talking to college students about, you you didn't come to college to be coddled and made to feel good about what you believe. You came to learn and to learn how to think and how to reason, how to argue. So without further ado, so we have you online. I'm so glad to see you. And Dr. Piper, I'm going to start with, I don't know if Matt the Wonderful has your, yeah, okay, we're connected, I guess. Okay, so Dr. Piper, you write for Washington Times on as a columnist. I want to hit 3 topics today, as I was telling you in my earlier text. One is you're talking about the limitations on speech that the left seems to impose on America. The limitations on speech about, your column is called Democrats Protect Their Own Ideology but Say Nothing to Defend Free Speech. Is that ever the truth? But can you talk about kind of the main points you were making in that article?
Well, I'm trying to go back to history to set the context for my argument. And I remind everybody that almost every time, when you think of Hitler, when you think of Pol Pot, when you think of Mao, when you think of the Khmer Rouge, when you think of the Red Guard, when you think of all of these despots of history, what is one of the first things they did as they started to coalesce power? They started to control the language. They started to control the narrative. And that's exactly what you covered in your first 5. And that is, the media is actually playing the same game that tyranny plays. And that is, you control the ideas that people can consume, people can digest, and therefore you can control the people. Hitler, in 1933, they burned 25,000 books on May 10th, 1933. Books from authors such as Albert Einstein and Ernest Hemingway and Helen Keller. And at the same time, 40,000 people gathered in Berlin while they were burning these books to hear Joseph Goebbels give a speech on committing to the flames the evil spirit of the past. So everything that had historical value, tradition, was committed to the flames as people cheered. And we know the story of in 1966 when Mao Zedong took over China and he had the Red Guard, his students. He spread them out across the nation so that they could terrorize people and burn books. Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, he burned books. And now we have the left. We have the Michigan Attorney General, Dana Nessel, who issued a cease and desist letter to big league politics if they didn't stop perpetuating fake news, quote unquote, of voter fraud. Fake news of voter fraud? Excuse me? I think that's for the American people to decide whether or not the news that we're getting on voter fraud is real or whether it's not. And I could go on and on. I do in this article. I basically am challenging everybody to recognize that the lesson of George Santayana is very important. If we don't learn the lessons of history, we're doomed to repeat them. And this pandering of political correctness where we're allowing the left to censor everything we say and to threaten us to be quiet if we have something unpopular to say is exactly what's been happening in the colleges and universities for the last 2 decades in this call for safe spaces. Anytime you start censoring language on a college campus, you're going to start censoring ideas in the broader culture because those college students are going to graduate and become CEOs of Twitter and Apple and Google and every other corporation that then seeks, and CNN, that then seeks to start silencing the ideas they don't like. Therefore, we have the news that we're dealing with today.
That is such a great parallel you drew, such a great dot connecting. And actually, some of the examples you gave in your article, I want to talk about them just a little bit more because they relate to the place we find ourselves in America today in this 2020 election cycle. This is post-election, so this is a hearing in the United States Senate on the Judiciary Committee, November 17th. Democrats were chiding Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, CEOs of Facebook and Twitter, respectively, for not censoring the American people more than they already have. And why this is so dangerous, I mean, people make the argument about Facebook and Twitter. Well, they're private companies. They can do what they want. But this is the United States government, the Senate, the upper body, the statesmen allegedly in Washington, actually telling Zuckerberg of Facebook and Jack Dorsey of Twitter that they don't censor America enough. Feinstein asked Zuckerberg what Facebook has done to quash the spread of misinformation regarding the 2020 presidential election. Okay, these are social media outlets that don't let America understand the depth of the problem of the Hunter Biden laptop. People who tweeted and wrote about Hunter Biden's laptop and emails were shut down, or their postings were removed. I mean, this is scary. This is not private companies anymore. This is the government taking the side, taking the Mao Zedong path, right?
Well, it is. And I cover Feinstein and her questions of Zuckerberg, where she said that Facebook should be censoring more. They should be censoring more the misinformation regarding the presidential election. You have Senator Chris Coons.
Whoop, do we just lose him?
I'll get him back.
Okay, well, while we're looking for him, I don't know what happened. We dropped the call, I guess. But he's about to tell you. So Dianne Feinstein on the Judiciary Committee getting after these social media already heavily censorious organizations, Facebook and Twitter. Okay,
Are we still there?
Yes, hi. Go ahead, sir. Sorry, you were just on Chris Coons.
I'm sorry. I'm not too sure why I dropped, but what I'm trying to say here is you've got these senators calling upon Facebook and Twitter to actually censor us more. And one thing I learned in my academic work at Michigan State University when I was working on my doctorate is this: anytime anybody tries to hide data, there's a reason. Anytime somebody tries to dodge a critical question, there's a reason. Anytime somebody starts massaging the data and the statistics to their advantage, there's a reason. And the reason for all of that is they've been caught in a lie. They've been caught manipulating the truth rather than just allowing the reader to consume the claims and then come to the conclusions that we all as adults should be able to come to. These people want to censor us. And anytime they get caught saying something that's marginally true or completely false, they start massaging the data to silence us.
You know, it isn't. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because, as I mentioned to you before that we came on air, I'm still in the camp. Trump won the election, and I'm hoping somehow our legal system gets to the right answer. But assuming we were to be encumbered by a fraudulent election and have Joe Biden become our president, this is his political party. This is a political party that is seeking to have a majority in the Senate, depending on the outcome of the 2 Georgia Senate races. And if you were to have a Biden presidency, the slim majority of Democrats in the U.S. House and the Senate majority this is a solidification of power by the mindset that is saying we're not going to tolerate people putting statements out there that either we don't like, we think could be incorrect, or even if they're correct, we don't like them, we don't want them said. I mean, I can hardly stand the thought of thinking of America, the home of the First Amendment, the beautiful, and you and I have talked about many times, Dr. Piper, we could be heading down a Mao Zedong, Hitler kind of path where for the good of America, for the good of citizens, we're being told what you can hear. I mean, are you alarmed about this in America?
Well, in some sense, we're not in danger of going down that path. We've already taken a step or two down that path of censorship. We've got high-tech book burnings going on right now. We've got books that are not being promoted on Amazon.com because Amazon has decided those books are verboten. They're unwelcome. Those ideas can't be expressed. I've been censored from Facebook. I cannot post on Facebook group pages until December 29th. And I don't even know why. They just sent me a note saying you violated our standards. I don't know why. They've censored me. They don't allow me to say what I'm saying on your show. I can't do so on Facebook. This is why Parler is exploding right now. I can go over to Parler and say what I want without being censored, but I can't do so on Twitter. I can't do so on Amazon.com. I can't do so on Facebook. I can't do so on Instagram. The list goes on and on and on. They already are guilty of high-tech book burnings.
I love that expression, high-tech book burnings. It's really, really eloquent, and it actually is a visual, too. It really helps people get the picture of it. Yeah, it's a very, very serious time, and I perhaps this is Pollyanna on my part, but I do keep thinking there should be people on the American left who have the kind of Patrick Henry spirit that says, you know, I disagree with what you're saying, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. I keep hoping there's still that mindset out there in some faction of the American left, because right now, all of what we're talking about gets pitched in the media as conservative versus liberal. And so it's dismissed as a political dispute when it's really something the higher level thinkers who love freedom and love the First Amendment, all of them, however they break down the political, the line of from right to left on the political line, should want to have this. And so I'm wishing very much we'd hear from leftists, and actually even Dr. Piper, your experience at Oklahoma Wesleyan. You started to recognize there that there were other universities. I may be incorrect in remembering this, but I thought you started recognizing other universities more willing to censor speech than you understood to be the right thing. Am I remembering that correctly?
I want to make sure I understood. What ask your question again, please.
Sorry, it got too long. But when you were president of Oklahoma Wesleyan, I have this memory, and perhaps it's incorrect, that you were aware other universities are more amenable to censoring speech than than they should have been. You think that's right?
Oh, there's no question. Brown and Berkeley. I mean, the irony is Berkeley, the birthplace of free speech, so they claim, was shutting down free speech. They wouldn't allow Ben Shapiro to come on campus without protesting him. I mean, Brown, Berkeley, University of Wyoming, you've got Emory, you've got colleges and universities across the land, University of Michigan, University of New York. You've got all of these colleges and universities that are shutting down free speech in the name of safe spaces. And here's the thing, and this is a corollary to the COVID conversation. We should not be a country that cherishes safety as our first thing. We should be a country, and we are a country, that has a constitution that isn't safe, but a constitution that's good. There's a huge difference between goodness and safety, and we should cherish goodness as our first thing, our summum bonum. We should never replace our first thing, goodness, freedom, liberty, for safety. In fact, Benjamin Franklin, and I'm going to butcher his quote a little bit here, but he said, those who desire safety and will give up a little bit of liberty for it are not going to get either safety or liberty because they've given up all. And that's exactly the conversation we're having in the United States right now with regard to COVID. Because you can't post things in social media that are critical of the government edicts with regard to COVID. You can't do that any longer. You cannot have an honest conversation. You cannot pursue the truth. You have to accept Big Brother's narrative, otherwise you're silent. We have to step forward and say, no, enough is enough. We will not comply.
Could not agree more. And actually, you mentioned a moment ago about the other social media alternatives as now they used to be the new media. Now they're kind of the traditional social media outlets of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, have become increasingly censoring conservative views. Then all these new ones come out. So I will quickly tell our listeners, yes, I've been getting your emails and encouraging me to go to Rumble. So we're setting up Rumble. I'm not getting off of any of the existing media unless they kick me off. I've got 2 strikes in a couple places, but I'm still there. But Rumble is a great place, pretty kind of similar to YouTube. Rumble's a great place. Parler, we're going to be expanding our show into that arena, because the idea that we have to fight to get free speech available, fight to have the avenue to spread our free speech ideas is very, very challenging. Well, Dr. Piper, 2 other topics I want to hit with you today. One is there was a Supreme Court ruling that relates to COVID and relates to the rulings in New York State that concern churches and the idea that whether or not the government could limit the number of people attending churches. it's okay if they attend riots, but attending churches was to be limited, and a great Supreme Court decision came out with our new 5-4 majority. And I just want to let you talk about it a little bit, about your thoughts about that ruling and how important it is for America.
Well, we've accepted, and I want to say we, I mean the American people in general, have accepted this idea that freedom of religion is not an essential thing. We've been declared non-essential. The church has been declared by the government as non-essential. So you can go to a casino in Tulsa, Oklahoma without fear of being harassed. But you can't go to church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because this little Napoleon Bonaparte, who's the mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma, has declared that churches need to be shut down, but yet he doesn't do the same for a casino. He doesn't do the same for a liquor store. He doesn't do the same for strip clubs, but he will shut down the church because churches are guilty of being spreaders of COVID. This is asinine. It makes no sense. It's bad science, and that's the way we should respond to these people. I thought you wanted to follow the science. You show me any science, any data, any statistics that show that churches are spreading COVID at greater numbers than casinos. And when you do, then we'll have a discussion. But until then, leave us alone. We're going to go to church. We've got freedom of religion in America, and the Supreme Court has just confirmed that. Tell these little Napoleons to just go pound sand.
I love that. And I was going to say, just in time that we got that President Trump was able to nominate and have confirmed Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who really turned out to be the pivotal vote, as we have simply whatever has happened to Supreme Chief Justice Roberts, I don't really know, but in any case, he's gone, to the left. He's gone to the dark side, so he's not reliable any longer. But really, what a beautiful bit of protection for America that we had Amy Coney Barrett, and therefore a majority of 5 who could stand up for the First Amendment, in particular the freedom of religion. It was truly a just-in-time saving of religious freedom in America. I was very, very grateful she is there. Okay, we had one more quick topic, and I just want to, if we end up with a Biden administration, which I still am telling you we're not going to, or I am earnestly hoping and actually believing we still will not be stuck with it, but there was a lot of talk about mask mandates. The moment that Biden takes office, he swears day one he's going to call every governor and mayor and tell them they all have to put in place mask mandates. You had a tweet out, and I don't have it out in front of me, but a tweet that was challenging what Biden is planning on doing and talking about it interfering with our constitutional freedoms. Can you explain why you say that?
Well, he put out a tweet saying, I want to be clear that wearing a mask does not impede your personal freedom. It actually is something that you should welcome because it allows you to return to normal. Now, excuse me, I want to be clear. Government oligarchs like Joe Biden telling me what I need to wear, that's none of his business. Telling me where I can go to church, that's none of his business. When I can go to church, how I can go to church, when I can sing, when I can't sing a hymn, that's none of his business. Telling me when I can go to a restaurant, when I can't, how I can go to a grocery store, or if I can't, what I need to wear when I go to a grocery store, this is none of his business. This is unconstitutional. Where in the Constitution does it give the government any right to tell you what to wear?
Dr. Piper, you have to know, as the expression you're preaching to the choir, could not agree more. I just think as Americans move forward, if we end up with a Biden administration and you realize how extreme the measures are going to be, how forceful, how unrelenting, how, apparently going to be announced with no excuses, no way around it, I think you'll have more Americans coming around to recognizing that this whole concept of the government telling you what you have to do, what to wear in order to keep you safe, there'll be more people getting around to not just personal objection, but actually just saying, no, this is a constitutional issue. I could not agree more. I'm so glad that you're putting it in those terms. Dr. Piper, I love first Tuesday of the month. It's great to have on every time. I'm sorry we start a little bit late today. I'm so glad you're available. Thanks so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.